Welcome everybody out to sea. Here we are. So day 4, no alcohol. And if you watched the super heavy video I made yesterday for Christmas, which I just had to get that out, I talked about how day 4 is a big relapse day for me. You know, I remember, I think it was the first time I truly attempted to get sober, and this was before I was really strung out on dope or anything. I was pretty much just smoking weed and drinking beer. I was 19 years old, and it was my second apartment with a buddy, and I decided I wanted to be a responsible adult and get sober. And I cracked on the 4th day and had some beers and smoked some weed. And I remember I felt like such a failure. I was so ashamed that I couldn't follow through with it. And that's the first memory I have of attempting to stop my use and not being able to. So, you know, today that amnesia kicks in where a beer just sounds really good. You know, my body is not feeling so bad anymore from all the alcohol, and it's like, oh, let's get this going again. And so, you know, it's just a thought. You know, I'm not gonna do that, and I'm in a really safe, comfortable place. You know, I don't really feel comfortable in big cities anymore. Places like Seattle, there's just, the drugs are so rampant. I just couldn't do it. It's just so in your face. So I'm in a really safe environment now. And sure, I'm sure if I went digging around, I could find something, but I have to work pretty hard at it. And that's just so far from my reality right now. So I feel I'm in the safest possible place I can be to get this done. So moving forward, you know, I've continued reducing the Suboxone dose, and I'm starting to feel that. You know, even just a week ago, I was taking 8-ish milligrams a day, and I'm down to 4 now. You know, I took my 2 milligram strip this morning at 7:30, and I'm starting to feel it. And this is the first time in a year that I've had even the smallest hint of opioid. I mean, I'm not even in withdrawal right now, but my body's talking to me like, hey, it's time for some more Suboxone, buddy. And I'm just so sick of that feeling. However, you know, I have to have gratitude for Suboxone. You know, my view has shifted greatly this last time around I've been on it, where I used to view it as a scourge and a failure and just government dope. You know, now I have to have gratitude that I have a medication that's effective for me, because what the Suboxone does, it allows me to be stable and present, and it keeps me from relapsing on any other opioid, whether it's heroin or fentanyl or kratom even. You know, the buprenorphine fills those receptors, and unless you really work at it, you know, opiates aren't going to work when you're on this stuff. So it keeps you safe, it keeps you stable. And, you know, I've had to accept now that I have a child who relies on me, it doesn't really matter what I think or how I feel about it anymore. The matter of the fact is, it keeps me stable and present for him. And that's what's important. So it's not just about me anymore, you know? So yeah, that's where that's at. You know, I'm dropping down the cannabis considerably. You know, I've been smoking flower, but I've been getting my, you know, vape pens and eating the edibles and just saturating myself in cannabinoids. And so I'm just using the flower, and I've cut back drastically on that too. You know, I want it to be effective when it comes time to get off of this Suboxone, because cannabis is my friend with Suboxone detox. And I've come to find that the Rick Simpson oil, you know, that crude cannabis extract that has all the full spectrum of the cannabinoids, the stuff I got at the dispensary here, it was like 80% cannabinoids, and it puts me to sleep so nicely, And when I take that Rick Simpson oil, around 100 milligrams, I forget about my Suboxone. I'll take the dose hours and hours later than usual. It'll hit me, oh wow, I didn't even take the Suboxone. So the Rick Simpson oil is kind of new to me. And, it seems to have legitimate medical benefits. I can see why, people with cancer use it and whatnot, because it doesn't have the same buzz that smoking gives me. It just puts me to sleep and relieves pain and makes me forget about taking Suboxone. So I think that's going to be, the last cannabis I use is probably going to be that Rick Simpson oil. Luckily I quit smoking cigarettes. I haven't smoked in months, and I'm really happy about that. I don't think about that anymore. So that's an accomplishment. I've really come a long, long ways in all reality. So yeah, that's where, I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in, and I'm just getting prepared because February's around the corner, and getting off Suboxone is not easy. But I'm doing what I can to make this, as simple as possible. So enough of that. Let's talk about LSD. LSD has had a renaissance. The last 10 or 20 years. There's, publicly traded corporations that have patents on LSD and psychedelics for a variety of psychiatric disorders. It's pretty much full-on snake oil at this point. And when I ask myself about the countless LSD experiences I've had, massive doses at that, what has it done for me? It's hard to say what trajectory my life would have taken if I would have never been introduced to LSD or any of these drugs. I would like to think that the LSD has made me, a more open-thinking, kinder, softer person, that's more open to different perspectives. But now that I haven't actually taken LSD in quite a long time, or any psychedelics, and have left all that behind me, the more and more I really have to question, was I having entheogenic experiences? LSD and psychedelics have been coined entheogens, God-producing. Are they producing God? Or are they the other definition that psychedelics have been coined, psychotomimetic, psychosis producing? I've had experiences with psychedelics where I believed I had come into contact with God. It wasn't a person or anything with a face that can be explained, but just a oneness, a paradoxical oneness, everything and nothing all at the same time. Love and hate, black and white paradox. It's paradox. But has it been good for me? Has it been beneficial? All this acid I took over the years. In retrospect, I feel like it really made me closed-minded. It made me a bit narcissistic. I felt as though people who haven't taken LSD, well, they're just not living. They're not experienced. They don't know what I know. How could they? Because, words don't really suffice the psychedelic experience. But in retrospect, I feel psychedelics made me greatly narcissistic. They did not make me a more caring person. They did not make me a more open-minded person. You couldn't tell me nothing, man. Kanye status. I'm the psychedelic wizard. I've had visions that you have not had. I got to a point where I was putting more stock in my hallucinations than reality. I went deep down the rabbit hole, and I got arrested by the DEA when I was 17. I sold 2,500 hits of liquid amber to a federal informant, this kid named Josh Thorpe. He's dead now, heroin overdose. Most of the people in this story are dead of heroin overdoses. That's another odd thing. All the people who were deep into LSD in the 90s, all strung out on heroin and coke. What's up with that? I thought psychedelics were supposed to be anti-addictive. However, we were not taking these things in a therapeutic manner. We're talking about thumbprints, fingerprints, getting puddled. We're talking multi-milligram dosages of LSD. This is not Johns Hopkins research, perfectly measured 100 mics pure L. We're talking getting puddled with grimy, impure fucking Schwamber, boy. Just grilling faces off. And so when I was 16, these guys puddled me. It was my rite of passage. And I'm writing my book, and I'm kind of feeling this channel as a parallel to it. And it's called Nightmares. 25 years of drug culture. And it works in a fairly linear order. Part 1, LSD, the Grand Delusion. Part 2, Heroin, the Vampire. Part 3, Ibogaine, the Exorcism. Part 4, Suboxone, the Damage Done. That's where we're at now. So I'm going to read a quick excerpt from Part 1, LSD, the Grand Delusion. And this is from when I got puddled out with a vial, a food coloring vial that had the equivalent of 4,000 hits in there. There was 4 points or 4/10 of a gram diluted into this 200 drop food coloring vial. And I had that squirted down my throat. I ended up in the bushes in someone's front yard, turned inside out, believed I had met both God and Satan. I died and I was reborn, and I fished out in the bushes, and somehow I took this experience as positive. So more and more, I'm kind of viewing psychedelics as psychotomimetic, psychosis inducing. Maybe if you don't have the history of me of severe polysubstance abuse, controlled responsible doses of LSD can be beneficial. But the way we were doing it, man, there's a fine line between medicine and poison. And there's so much wisdom in that. When I was a kid, microdosing didn't exist. We were macrodosing. And when I first started learning about fingerprints and thumbprints, it doesn't even sound real. It sounds mythical. There's message boards on Reddit, people talking about that's not even possible. Thumbprints, fingerprints, it doesn't sound real, but I'll tell you, it is. So anyways, here's a small piece from Fingerprints and Puddles. Ellie had this vial of acid, a tear-shaped clear plastic food coloring vial with a red cap full of purple liquid. But this was not your run-of-the-mill 100-dose vial of liquid. This was psychopathic family wash. The content of this vial came from a Gerber baby food jar that either Ellie or Rob had squirreled away in a storage unit. The jar had 10G written on the lid in Sharpie, denoting that there had been 10 grams of crystal L in there at one point. Rob had sold that 100,000 doses, but there remained about 3 to 4 points, tenths of a gram, of residual bonus at the bottom of the jar. The food coloring liquid was replaced with vodka. The now purple vodka was poured into the baby food jar, shaken to dissolve the crystal L, and then voila, around 3 to 4,000 standard doses were dissolved into the couple hundred drops the vial held, 15 to 20 hits per drop. Standing in Lee's living room, he took the cap off that vial and told me to open my mouth. I was hesitant but didn't want to be a pussy, especially since I'd come to identify my masculinity in extreme drug taking. I figured he'd give me a drop or two. I didn't think he was going to squirt a little stream down my throat. From a somewhat malevolent, knowing smile on his face that framed dark, curly hair, aquiline nose, and eyes juxtaposing childish wonder with wicked glint, he asked, "Can you feel the tingle in your jaw, man?" Sure enough, an electrical tingling sensation crept through my jaw on pins and needles, and I thought to myself, I should have put out my hand instead of opening my mouth. So we'll continue. We'll continue. I hope everyone's doing well out there, and if you're struggling with this thing I'm dealing with, just try to keep your head up, and if you need someone to talk to, message me. So much love, everybody. Peace.